first thing I wanted to share on this topic of AI is something I had tweeted to my super followers, actually. So I'll just let you read this tweet that I'd shared with my subscribers, because I think it is first really important to recognize this, right? So there's a lot going on with AI, and we see AI everywhere. And I see a lot of this kind of sometimes reluctance and almost fear of trying to engage with what's going on with AI. And I just wanted to call out that oftentimes this reluctance is rooted in our fear of missing out on a big wave, or fear of having to learn something new, or just fear that we'll become obsolete, right? So sometimes it's easier for us to just ignore what's going on and like create a rational reason around it, which is like, oh, it's hype, and I just want to do my job. I don't want to bother with all this AI stuff right now. But what I want to share, at least my perspective on AI and again, this is something like I shared many, many, many months ago, well before ChatGPT and other things launched, is that I firmly believe that AI is this next big wave in technology. And I just want to call out that like in our lifetimes, we'll only see a few big waves in our career. And I do strongly believe that AI is it, right? And before this was mobile, and mobile wasn't that big, but sort of in the 2008, 2009 period is when we saw mobile. And before that was the World Wide Web, right? Like we don't see many of these in our lifetime. And in some ways, we are lucky to kind of like be in the middle of this right now. I think if you kind of just recognize this truth, and if you're feeling reluctance and fear, instead of ignoring that fear, like just like accept the fear, because that's the only way you'll take the next step, right? So if you're then ready to take the next step, right, like what is to be done? So first, I'll split it into a few categories. So category one is, I would highly recommend that you use AI products, and you can use them for your work, for your product manager job, right? That sort of stuff is like obvious, and I know many people are doing it, but I'll perhaps share some non-obvious things you can use ChatGPT for. First one is when you are having a difficult conversation. Now, as product people, we often have difficult conversations with people. And what I find is that like most of the anxiety and most of the problems that occur from difficult conversations is basically a messaging problem. So if we can message much better, we can be a lot more effective and influential. You can actually use something like ChatGPT today to tweak your message, right? Say you want to have a conversation with somebody about them not kind of being as engaged on certain tasks and missing deadlines or whatever the case might be. You can literally go to ChatGPT, describe the situation, and then it will provide a response to you. And most people stop at that response and say, okay, I'll tweak it. But what many people don't realize is that you can further ask ChatGPT to refine the response for you. You can say, well, is there a different word for this thing that you used? Or could you reframe this to make this a little softer? Or give me 4 or 5 different options for how I might say it. And again, I'll just share a quick example. I did this for a tweet. What I'm showing you here is I had this kind of tweet that I wanted to write, and it was a little difficult because I wasn't sure how to express a certain competitor. Basically, I went through this whole process of like, hey, ChatGPT, what is a good way to say that a company is past its peak, right? Then it gave me something. And then I said, but how about this? Is there any better way to frame that? And, and then it said, I said, okay, now this is my current version. How is this? And then I asked it for 3 or 4 variants, right? Like, and on and on. Again, the point is not like, I'm just showing this as an example for a tweet, but the point is you can do this for anything, right? Any kind of communication. So I would highly recommend that you do that. Now, I'm not just recommending that you do these things for just the sake of your job, although that is already a very good reason to do it. The second category I want you to pay attention to is as you use these products, you will get ideas for how to incorporate and how to make your current product better. And there are probably a couple of variants here. One variant is that you work on a product that is likely to get completely disrupted with AI. Right. And there are plenty of examples of such products. Many kind of SaaS products fall in that category. For instance, like if you're doing any contact center SaaS thing, right? Well, a lot of your users are actually going to disappear overnight, right? And that impacts all sorts of things, including your per seat pricing. And it basically impacts everything. So there are entire categories that are going to get disrupted. right? So that's one reason why you need to understand what the potential of these tools is. And the only way you'll understand the potential of these tools is by using it. The second is where maybe your product is not going to get disrupted, but you ought to be thinking about what sort of features will create differentiation in your product where you're kind of using generative AI or other kind of new approaches, right? So that's the second category I wanted to call out. Third category is, and I know this is something PMs are often like wondering about, will my job get obsolete? Here's my belief about that question. My belief is that what is going to happen is that teams are going to get significantly smaller. So that's number one. A result of teams getting significantly smaller for the same amount of work is that there is less coordination overhead. An impact of that, of less coordination overhead, is that now the project management aspect of product management is going to be less important. It's still going to be a key part of it, but it's just going to be less important than it is right now, right? Simply because the teams are smaller. So that's number one. Number two, you are going to be in a situation where the main part of the PM role is going to become even more important, while these other commodity things are basically going to be much easier to do. Basically, you will not be spending 3 hours writing some complex, 5-table join SQL and marveling at the beauty of the SQL you wrote and sharing it with your colleagues so they can appreciate the SQL you wrote, right? Like that is just not going to be as vital for your job. What is going to be vital is your judgment, your instinct and creativity. Because in a world where everybody has access to these AI tools, what is going to happen is the differentiation is going to be created by what you do with all of this, right? And that still boils down to creativity, and it boils down to insight, and it boils down to empathy for the customer. So as you're thinking about how you should think about your skills and how to adapt to this future, I would say it is very, very vital that you understand how to grow your empathy, how to grow your ability to sort of like have better judgment, so clear thinking, and how to improve your creativity. Because those parts of the job, I firmly believe, are the ones that will help you create better products than your competitor who has access to the very same AI tools. So my main recommendation here would be, as you think of the long term, please invest in upskilling in those areas, because that's going to ensure that you have very high job security and that you're still able to make a massive impact in the products you work on.